Just because you can go for a record doesn't mean you should. And I think one of the best representations of this principle can be found with the Hala Madrid roller coaster at Real Madrid World in Dubai. Hala Madrid is a GCI manufactured wooden coaster with the most zero gravity moments on any wood coaster in the world. That is, any moment with uplifting forces intended to send your butt up out of the seat, thus giving you that weightless sensation. Airtime is my absolute favorite feeling on a roller coaster. Almost all of my top rides have aggressive maneuvers meant to send riders flying, and it makes for an incredibly memorable experience. This includes rides like the Voyage at Holiday World, with its incredible 6,000 feet of track and 23 individual moments where it is possible to get airtime. But what if I told you that Hala Madrid, a ride almost half the length of the Voyage, technically has more airtime moments? I was skeptical too, but after counting it all up myself, I found 25 potential moments of weightlessness. Now, whether or not these actually deliver on sending riders up out of their seats will vary. Morning rides will provide a slower experience, it'll likely run faster during intense heat, and if you get a full train of guests versus a mostly empty train, that'll absolutely affect the experience. But statistically, in just the actual hills we see out in front of us, Hala Madrid has more. But does that make Hala Madrid better than the Voyage? Absolutely not. This is a classic case of quantity over quality. And in this review, I'm going to dive into everything about Hala Madrid, the layout, how it came to be, and what could have been done different to improve this very unconventional ride. And you know, believe it or not, Hala Madrid's issues actually began long before the ride was ever built. Real Madrid World is the second iteration of a previously failed property known as Bollywood Park. It was one of 3 gates at Dubai Parks and Resorts and was based all around that popular genre of film that's enjoyed by Middle Eastern, African, and Asian audiences. They opened their doors alongside the other parks in 2016, and while all of them struggled to some degree, Bollywood was immediately the outlier. Historically, it saw little to no visitors on a day-to-day basis. It may have had elaborate theming and well-produced shows, but it just seemed like Dubai tourists weren't interested in paying the high price to visit a Bollywood theme park. So, with hopes to help change that, Dubai Parks and Resorts invested in the country's first wooden roller coaster. That way the park would finally have a major thrill ride. But there was just one little problem. The ride would never actually open with the park. Bombay Express, as it was known at the time, sat SB&O, standing but not operating, for 4 years. Supposedly, they struggled with local governments to get approval for actual opening. It would periodically send test trains, but never actually allowed riders on board. Finally, after 7 years of operation, Dubai Parks and Resorts closed Bollywood for the final time. It would never operate again in this form, but instead would make its return in a new genre: football, or as my fellow Americans call it, soccer. The world's first theme park based around a pro sports team opened 1 year later in spring 2024 as Real Madrid World. This time, successfully debuting the wooden roller coaster now named Hala Madrid. Hala Madrid is a war cry, or another way of saying "Go Madrid." It's what the fans would echo to cheer for their team. The park claims this ride is meant to ride on the highs and the lows of the beautiful game, embody the team's brilliant spirit. Never mind the fact that it was never built for a sports team in the first place. But to coincide with the retheme, the park filled the queue in station with banners, little interesting tidbits about the actual team. When you actually hit the brake run on the ride, they have a big banner saying, "We won!" And it's all in all a very odd ride choice for a sports team. I never actually had the opportunity to visit the Bollywood Park. I first visited Dubai Parks during that transition period, and I was really bummed that at the time I couldn't ride this because the attraction sits right next to the main parking lot for Riverland. You see the sprawling hills, and to give them credit, it is a statement piece. I imagine Real Madrid World is doing better than Bollywood just purely for the fact that this ride is actually open. But that being said, during my visit to Real Madrid World, we were some of the only guests there. Most of my rides on Hala Madrid were a Zen ride. Just me, myself, and I. Occasionally, with a couple people, I did manage to get probably 7 or 8 laps on the coaster. It's a shame because I would have loved to see how this ride would change with a full train. I have heard from a viewer who did get that experience, said that it absolutely runs faster than you'd expect, and that makes it a better experience. But just based off of my visit, I'm only able to speak on how it's running that day. Hala Madrid dispatches left out of the station into a little dip and a fast lateral transition into lift hill. You'll begin to climb up 113 feet in the air, quite possibly the tallest ride at Dubai Parks and Resorts. I'm not sure the height of the spike on Capital Bullet Train. I could see it going either way, which is actually bigger. You'll crest over, getting a great view of the Dubai desert out ahead of you. The main freeway to the right is a huge soccer or football field. And of course, this twisted mess of track ahead of you. Hala Madrid is essentially a triple out and back layout. This is a popular ride type really dating as far back as the Cyclone at Coney Island, where the idea was you could reuse some of the same structure to support multiple sections of track. So as you're gradually losing speed, you just thread underneath yourself, creating some cool near-miss effects, still keeping a good pace, and made for a nice compact experience. But Hala Madrid sends you into a straight down drop, not a curved drop like a lot of GCI coasters. This descends at a 64-degree angle, dropping you all the way down to the ground. You get a decent amount of air here in the back. You enter a quick little speed hill and immediately float up into your first turnaround. You're banking to left, getting a lot of lateral forces here, gradually sloping downwards, then dropping into a double down, passing directly under a section of track, and there's a great near miss. The second down here really is the standout as you have more speed and you actually bank slightly to the right, getting a nice little twist in there. There's a small snap to the right up against that first drop, and then airtime pop into another lateral turn, this time to the right. Now you begin that trip back towards the first turnaround with a small drop and another double down. This is a real little one. You'll see none of these hills bring you all the way back down to the ground again. That's to help control the speed of the train. Should you experience a larger drop, you have a lot more momentum. Then you have to put more time and more track in between hills. If you're trying to break a record for most zero gravity moments, that's not going to fly. All these hills are right back to back to back, keeping a consistent speed, but not necessarily a fast one. There's a bank curve to the right through the structure, and then you rise into a little double up. Again, real small pops here, and then you get a decent sized drop. In the back, that hill is one of my favorite parts of the ride. And surprise, surprise, is because it's actually one of the biggest drops in the layout, and I wish there were more of those. You'll dip back through the structure into a little banked airtime hill, float back up, step to the left, and then drop back down, threading through the lift hill, banking up and around through the structure, twisting to the right. Tons of hand choppers here, and you've now aligned yourself directly with those airtime hills that you just passed over moments ago, now up against the ground where you'll experience a series of real small bunny hops. This is really where you start to feel the speed on Hala Madrid. These last couple bunny hops didn't really do anything, at least from my experience. I don't recall getting a lot of airtime, but at least we were keeping a good pace. There's a long drawn out left-handed bank, another decent sized dip, a twist to the right, back to left, and then you rise up into the brake run. 25 individual airtime pops. And unfortunately, not all of them hit. After experiencing it, I could feel the constraint that the designers had that ultimately is holding this ride back. I think they did about the best they could with 3,400 feet of track, but originally Bollywood was claiming that this ride was going to have 33 airtime moments. If this felt like a few too many hills, try to imagine 8 more. More airtime does not necessarily mean better. I remember a lot of people were saying a similar sort of thing when Steel Vengeance came out. That's another ride that tried to claim they had the most airtime moments, and many of those are real small bunny hills. Similar mentality, just pack in as much as you can. And personally, I never agree with that decision. I understand the appeal from a marketing perspective. Having a record might play some role in whether or not someone pays $100 to go into your park, but I feel ultimately, if they ride the coolest wooden roller coaster they've ever experienced, that's what will get them coming back. And in my opinion, Hala Madrid is, to be honest, one of the weaker GCIs. And I don't fault any of the talented designers at Skyline Attractions. To me, they have more than proven themselves when it comes to crazy, out-of-control GCI coasters. There's a reason why if you're able to look at a lineup of their typical attractions, this is the odd one out. I kind of view it like GCI's Balder. If you're unfamiliar with Balder at Liseberg, it's an Intamin prefabricated wooden roller coaster with a similar style where none of these drops really go all the way down to the ground. It's just small hills as you gradually descend down into this like triple out and back. I heard someone once compare it to the wooden equivalent of a Pinfari Zyklon, and I thought that was kind of funny. I personally would take this layout over Balder's. There certainly were moments on this layout that I did enjoy, and obviously I rode it 7 or 8 times, so that meant it wasn't too rough, it wasn't uncomfortable. Despite the fact that it sat SB&O for several years, I think it ran okay. Kind of felt like White Lightning in many ways, which kind of makes sense. They both have 6-car trains. White Lightning happens to be 13 miles per hour slower, but to be honest, I think White Lightning is a better paced attraction overall than Hala Madrid. I just look at this track length and get sad and wish that Dubai Parks had said, hey, just give us the best wooden coaster you can. Because with less height and less track, GCI was able to put out Colossus at Six Flags Qiddiya City. And that is one of the craziest, best paced rides I've ever experienced in my life. And it's because there weren't any constraints. When they're allowed to go for it, they just do. So for me personally, Hala Madrid is a 6.5 out of 10. It is not bad. It is not a bad ride at all. But I don't know if I would necessarily call it a great one either. I think to me, it's the park's anchor, but it's not an attraction that'll get me to want to come back. And if they had gone with a ride like Colossus or Texas Stingray, I absolutely would. Hala Madrid is a perfect representation of what Real Madrid World is. When you get so dead set on having a record, you sometimes sacrifice on the actual product. I'll have a full separate review of Real Madrid World coming soon, but in the same way, it did not live up to its potential despite looking good on paper. But I'd love to hear from you all down in the comments below. If you've ridden Hala Madrid, what were your thoughts on it? Do you agree with the points that I brought up? Do you think there's anything I missed? Be sure to let me know, and of course make sure to stay tuned for more coaster reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.